I'm Dr. Donna, and I am a holistic veterinarian here in Washington State, and I wanted to welcome you to my holistic pack. And today's an exciting day because I'm standing right next to red currant, which is our wonderful native red currant in our front yard. And I am a veterinarian that believes that animals can get better using natural medicine, especially for chronic diseases. So today I was going to introduce a new plant to you, a plant maybe you've heard of, maybe you haven't, but give you some nuances on how you can help your animal friend using it. Little sort of details maybe you haven't heard about, and that's valerian root. How to help your animal friend with valerian root. Do you know that valerian root is excellent to balance the heart and liver, and that it's really good? You know those days when you're really angry at something or someone or even yourself and you can't digest properly? You know, valerian root is really good for that. And for your animal friend, when there's a liver problem, then a lot of times we'll use valerian root to help settle the stomach. And in this video, I'm going to show you how that works and how you can use it. So I don't know if you can tell, but I'm surrounded with it right now. This is Valeriana officinalis, and I've got this one. This is the flower, which is just the most incredible smelling flower. It's beautiful and it smells beautiful. It's like a fragrant baby's breath or something like that. So it's a lovely plant in the garden. And then here's the stem and the flower over on this side. And then here's another valerian. You know, it's only supposed to get from, I think, between 2 and 5 feet or something. And there's about 200 species of valerian. So, and one thing I want you to see when you just look at it and you don't know anything about it is see these little red veins in the stem? And you can see them on this side. When it gets distressed, you can even see it more. And then what you know when you see that is that it does something for the blood. There's something associated with the blood with this plant. And maybe you don't know what it is, but it's kind of a cool little doctrine of signatures where something that we're treating looks like something that we're treating it with. So it's kind of a cool thing. So we generally use the root on this plant. We always use the root. And valerian root is a very complicated, it's complicated energetically, it's complicated chemically, and research has been, but one thing that's for sure about it is this is a natural sleep remedy, and so it's the most commonly prescribed herb or remedy at all, including medication. In Germany for sleeplessness, it's a very common herb in Europe, so for insomnia. In Chinese medicine, what it does is it calms the, it cools hypertension, calms the heart, calms the mind, because the heart and the mind are the same. And it calms hyperactive liver young. So it has a number of effects on the liver and heart, or where it sort of has its organ affinity. But of course, it has this complicated thing that it does in the nervous system, where it really is an anti-stressor. I just want to tell you, if you can bring in your friends, tell your friends about this channel, and it's Whole Pet Vet. And if you can subscribe to my YouTube channel, you can also click the links and join my Facebook pack. You can join my Instagram pack. You can also, like I said, subscribe. That's the best thing you could do to help us here today. Thanks so much. So we'll talk about its energetics in a second. I did want to tell you all the sources that I have that I read this morning about valerian, just to kind of refresh my memory. We have Rudolf Weiss's book. He's an MD, so this one's more about like the active ingredients, the chemical constituents, and all of the research that's been done. There's been thousands of studies on this plant and its chemical ingredients. And so if I have a question about them, because I may not pronounce them right or something, I'll refer back to that book. I just also like my New Age Herbalist book, and I don't actually even know who wrote it. Richard Mabey wrote it, looks like. But yeah, New Age Herbalist. This is kind of a fun little overview book, and it gives you a couple of interesting things to talk about. And then of course our old standby, which is Brigitte Mars's book, and she has a whole section on valerian also. So valerian is going to be in pretty much every herbal book because it has such a profound effect in the body. It's antibacterial, antispasmodic, so it helps with GI spasms, especially that are related to nervous system tension. So it's a hypotensive. If someone has a low blood pressure, this might not be a good herb for them. It's a sedative, it relaxes smooth muscle, and it increases GABA longevity. So GABA is one of the parasympathetic nervous systems. It's a part of the autonomic nervous system. It's the part that's responsible for anti-stress, for GI relaxation, for GI secretions. It's the yin. So this herb increases the yin. And now we know chemically how it does that, which is kind of a cool thing. It does it because it works on the enzyme. It makes it so the enzyme, it destroys the enzyme that destroys GABA. So it basically makes all the GABA in the body, the GABA, last longer. So, which is one of the hormones of the parasympathetic nervous system. So we actually know chemically how it works, which is kind of a cool thing. But we don't know everything about it, and it's got a lot of things that we don't know about it. So the root, we use the flower essences for encouraging sleep. I said there's over 200 species. In the mountains around here, we have the Sitka valerian. So this is the officinalis. This is the official version of valerian, the part that the Europeans brought over to North America, and now you find it kind of growing wild in ditches and things like that. It likes moist soil. And we also use it though as a flower essence. It would be a lighter, kind of softer approach doing that, but that would be another effect too. And I'll just talk about this as we kind of look at the roots right here. We'll look at this plant's roots. So I went ahead and dug this one up earlier. It will spread through the garden, and at least in our area. These are the medicinal parts. The roots are, sorry, this is a weed. So if you picked this root and you put it out for your cats, it actually attracts rats and attracts cats. It has a chemical in it that cats can't live without, and that chemical is called amitriptyline. And so, it's an amitriptyline. It's called actinidine. It's the same chemical that's in catnip. So cats will roll all around it, and when you have it in capsules, sometimes they'll attack the bottle where the capsules are, which is such a cool thing. So it has a relaxing effect on cats, kind of similar to catnip, where it stimulates and relaxes them. And that's what it does with people. It has a stimulatory effect, even though it's generally considering a cooling, calming herb. What happens, though, is it can have a reverse effect in people who have a lot of stagnation. If they have a lot of liver qi stagnation, this herb will actually have a reverse effect. It will stimulate someone. So, you hear sometimes people talking about that the herb isn't good for them, that they actually couldn't sleep at all when they had the herb. And it's like it made it worse. So then you know that those guys are liver qi stagnant. So there's perhaps not a more sort of telling herb than this as far as a few things. One is that it's got complicated energetics. You have to match the energetics of the herb to the energetics of the patient. So in a person, say you have someone who has a lot of stagnant liver qi, And I hate to say it, but there's really not a way to say it indifferent. They may have a lot of anger that's associated with maybe past experiences and things like that. And that has associated, and they may have stagnant liver qi for other reasons, but they are the people who, they might have, when you look at their tongue may have a lot of tooth prints in the sides. That's stagnant liver qi sometimes. I have a little bit of that. So it's not just like them and us, it's like in all of us. In animals, this might be an animal that was rescued. So we really don't distinguish. This herb reminds us that we do not distinguish between emotions and medicine, or the physical and the emotional body. To us, it's all the same. So in Chinese medicine, this is a heart liver herb. So for the heart, the emotion that negatively affects the heart is excess joy, which is kind of a weird, but almost like a manic joy. But the emotion that affects the liver negatively is anger, frustration, agitation, and we tend to hold that emotion. If we're the type of people that hold emotions, then we may have stagnant liver qi, and we may develop heat from that. And so this herb has both cooling and heating effects, stimulatory and calming effects. And I might talk a little bit about the chemistry, but I have to remember to do that. But first I'm just going to say, so what you would do if you were making the medicine from it is you would take the roots, and you might take a little glass. If you're just making a tincture, you might go ahead and cut the roots up and just do a fresh tincture, 2-to-1 in vodka. That might be a good way to do it, where you just clean them off. You don't necessarily need to dry them out, but you just cut them up, put them in a little bottle of vodka. Just half the amount is herb, and then double that is the vodka, so 2-to-1 ratio. And then what you want to do with valerian, though, is use a pretty high dose. Either you can use the tea. Some people take this root, they cut it up, and they put it in with raisins to kind of cut. There's a bitter, almost dirty gym sock smell to the dried root. And I can smell it a little bit with this. They say that when it's fresh, the chemistry is completely different than when it's dried or tinctured or aged. And so that's part of the problem with researching it. And a lot of these herbs are so complicated that our research can't quite keep up with, or can't quite kind of keep up with the plant. The plant's a lot more complicated than our research of it, I should say. So tea or tinctures, and at large dose. So a cat would have maybe 150 milligrams of the capsule twice a day. A large dog might have just what a human dose might be, like 425 milligrams 3 times a day, if you're really trying to calm. So this herb, there's almost not a better herb for the stress-related colitis animals. You know, the animals that every time their people get the suitcase out to go on a trip, they break with, bloody diarrhea, or they throw up. And this happens a lot in cats. So that stress-related gastric symptom is excellent for this. And that's because it calms the hyperactive yang. So there's an emotional aspect to valerian that's very important. I did want to say quickly, so there's a 1% volatile oil that is partially responsible for the sedation or the antispasmodic effect of this herb. So when I say antispasmodic, one of the things that causes vomiting and diarrhea is the spasms in the GI tract. And they're really under the control of the autonomic nervous system. We were talking earlier about GABA and the parasympathetic nervous system, and how important it is to tonify those, especially in our culture and especially when we get stressed. So we have the valeric acid, and then that is responsible, we believe, for the sedation or the antispasmodic effect. But then there's this depressant effect, or relaxant effect, I should say, is a better idea, on the autonomic nervous system. And they think that's due to these chemicals. Let's see if I pronounce it right. Volipitrates. I say that right. So those chemicals are more responsible for the effect on the autonomic nervous system and relaxing and relaxing the parasympathetic nervous system so that it can do its job. And it's not, so the sympathetic nervous system is responsible for flight and fight, and that's the yang in the body, you know, go, 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 do, 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 stress, stress, stress. Kind of like me when I was getting ready to do this lecture. And the parasympathetic is like relax, sleep, secrete digestive juices. Don't get your digestive tract in spasms. So that's where this herb's coming from a lot more. I mentioned when you boil it, you should say you don't boil it. It's very sensitive to heat. So valerian, if you boil it, you will destroy its active ingredients and some of its volatile oils. So you want to actually maybe do it almost like a infusion or prolonged infusion where you're simmering it very, very lightly if you're going to make a tea. And like I say, the raisins, a lot of people put the raisins in, just a couple tablespoons of raisins to a half a cup of valerian root cut up with a couple of cups of water, and they'll drink that down. Other than giving it to a person with a lot of stagnant liver qi and hypotensive person, someone with low blood pressure, there are really no contraindications. So for the animals, this is an excellent herb for fireworks, for a dog that maybe has seizures and they're stress-related seizures. That would be perfect. And I've used that a lot for that. Let me see. Right now, it was used a lot for World War I shell shock victims. The shell shock victims in Europe. So basically, you can imagine that if you have post-traumatic stress syndrome, especially the kind that affects your health in the sense, I guess it all does, but where you get headaches, where you get GI pain, where maybe you can't even eat, not for the kind where you have retained anger, but for the kind where your blood is hot. Maybe you have palpitations. This is an excellent herb for that. Cools the blood, calms the heart, calms the liver, and let's see, anything else that it's used for addictions in people, which is very interesting. So addictions to opioids, addictions to cigarettes, where you get that agitation afterwards. So, you know, for animals, boy, I would say that it's a wonderful, safe herb for animals. And I've used it right alongside dogs who are on seizure medications. One thing you do need to know, though, it will potentiate some of the barbiturates. So I might make sure the dose, say, of phenobarbital is low, and you might want to work with a healthcare provider, a holistic veterinarian, when you're using this herb. You might just ask them about it in the use of seizuring dogs. But you would want to make sure that phenobarb, you would probably need to lower the phenobarb level if you were going to use valerian concurrently. But I don't think there would be any problem with doing that. I've done that many times. And so let's see, anything else that I forgot? Oh, yeah, Brigitte, she talks about it using it topically for arthritis and rheumatic arthritis, so inflammatory arthritis. And I've never done that before. I was like all excited to try that, but it's got these terpenes in it, it's got these volatile oils, so those would get penetrated through the skin pretty well. So, you know, I mean, maybe taking the tincture and putting it on some arthritic knees or arthritic carpuses, something you can get to. One of the things about animals, they have so much hair, it's really hard to get to their skin and then have it permeate into their joints. But I just wanted to also show this herb one more time. And of course, as you get closer, it's interesting, as you get closer to the flowers, and again, when you use this in flower essences, it would also be used for sedation, but see how the stem gets redder and redder and redder as it goes up a lot of times. That's interesting too, isn't it? Maybe it tells you that, I mean, and I'm just guessing because it's not in my books, but that the flower might be working more on the heart, and maybe the root would be working more on the liver. I don't know. Certainly they both chemically work on, I mean, when you look at the volatile oils and the alkaloids and stuff, they work on the heart and liver. But just from an energetic standpoint, I wonder if perhaps using the flower essences is a lot more mind calming than working on the liver. But anyway, when you come down here, what you can do is you can divide. I don't want to move it too fast because Jeff's so nice in using the camera, but slowly. But so you can see here, this could actually be a whole bunch of plants. And that's what it does. It'll send out these shoots from the root. So the root is highly, so you could take this and you can, right, this plant here, you can make 20 plants out of this, nothing flat. And so you could just take clumps of this, and here you go, you've got a new plant. So this is a highly proliferative plant. It's a very, very, it spreads also, the seed, it'll seed, but so you can see all the root that's here. And I may, I could actually take a shovel to it. We'll kind of do this a little bit with it if we have room here. I have Culver's root behind this. Oh, that's so cool. We'll talk about that maybe one day, huh? Okay, so of course I don't have the right shoes. Okay, there we go. Sorry if I'm whipping you in the head or something. Okay, so now you can see the roots, really see them. Oh, aren't they beautiful? Look at those. There's your medicine. Looks kind of like a wig, doesn't it? So anyway, you can collect these roots. The cool thing is this plant is so tough that you could cut these roots, say for your epileptic dog or your anxious kitty when you go on trips. Cut them up, put them in a tincture, cut them up and put them in the freezer and use them as tea. Maybe freeze the tea in ice cubes. And then, look at this, you could cut this off and then you could still put this back in the ground. And this plant would be none the worse for it. You just cut the top off here and boom, you've got another plant ready to go next year like it never even worried. So it has all this extra root system. So in general, when we harvest roots, we do it in the fall when the energy is in the root, not when the energy is up in the plant. So generally roots in the fall, you know, or winter, maybe before the first freeze. And yeah, it's just a beautiful plant. Just a beautiful plant. Such a wonderful, chemically magical plant and such an emotional plant. I think of this plant, you can't ever talk about valerian and not talk about the emotions. You're always going to think about, you know, calming palpitations, calming the heart blood, the mind. You're always going to think about, you know, calming the hyperactive liver yang. And what that would do too is it would calm the wind. It would calm the heat in the liver. So the liver, that's responsible for our digestion. It's also responsible for maintaining good blood throughout the body, cool, clean blood, cleaning the blood. So the liver is responsible for all of these things. And so this is just kind of an aid to it, really, an ally to it. I'm trying to think of what other diseases you might try it for. You know, epilepsy is the one that comes to mind, but I guess, you know, it might be like those tonic-clonic seizures, those little tiny petite mal seizures, not tonic-clonic, but the little petite mal seizures, the ones like chewing gum seizures or running after your tail chasing seizures, bulldog seizures. Bulldogs get a lot of heat in their blood, and this herb might be excellent to calm that down. The dog who, you know, every time, generally when we think of stress, we think of heat, we think of palpitations, we think of all of those things. So generally when you get them in the car and they're already starting to pant, they're doing the stress pant, you can think about this herb. So this herb is really, really underused, underutilized. You don't have to grow your own medicine. You don't have to, you know, they sell this at the health food store. I mentioned a dose earlier, but it's a very safe herb. I can't think of a contraindication other than the ones I mentioned, and we don't really see low blood pressure, I don't think, in animals. It's always a little bit too high, but if they're on blood pressure medicine, I would watch that. if they're on seizure medicine, I would watch that. But otherwise, you can just use the capsules that they sell in the health food store, put a little bit in the food, and it would be good. We just have a lot of stress with our animals. We have a lot of, they're picking up on our stress, I think. So the more that we can calm them, it will help their GI tract, it will help them to digest their food, and it's just, anyway, it's one of those magical herbs. So thanks so much.